Did you lose your bet to Meta?
Yeah, I believe I did.
How do you feel about losing bets, bet after bet?
Well, it doesn't happen much, but I feel okay. This bet came down kind of close to the deadline at the end of the month, where when the bet was made, you and Meta were laughing that it was so obvious that the bet was going to be over by the end of January, which it wasn't. And so, yeah, I mean, I lost fair and square. And we know, rumor is that the reason it happened, because we all understand. I hope people in your audience understand. This doesn't mean the production rate is 100 cars a day. It's certainly not based on Troy's analysis. It's just there's a buffer of parking more cars out before shipping them. And rumor is that the reason why there's an increased amount is that you pitched your tent and the exit of the facility, blocking all the traffic from getting out. And so the cars have been delayed from delivered. So I guess that counts.
All right, we fixed so live chat is on again. Man, it was really nice. We had like 25 people in there, and now it's 0. I'm gonna link at the top the live chat. In the meantime, machine will tell you why you should go to the live chat.
Go to live chat because there's a lot of funny banter and interactions that you cannot get here. You need to have both the spaces and YouTube live chat on for the full experience.
Exactly. You get double the banter. So how do you feel about the Cybertruck production ramp now?
I don't know if it's materially increased that much more. I mean, it's certainly, I think, higher than it was before, but I think according to Troy, looking at the VINs, it's not like there's some massive gain. So, I feel fine with it, I guess. I'm positive. Uh, Nothing that would fundamentally change sort of my outlook from the share price in the shorter term.
Okay. The link to the live chat is at the top of our screens. Why do you think we're getting why do you think they're piling up on the parking lots? I mean, it's not like they can't transport a couple dozen trucks, and it's not like we have any demand issues, right?
I don't know. You could say the same anytime they've had a product which builds up, like megapacks often build up. Um, they'll have drone videos where there's a 60 or 100 megapacks. The megapack rate hasn't changed in half a year. Um, so sometimes that happens. Logistic reasons, waiting to batch trucks to pick up and send to individual delivery centers. I don't know.
We have Omar here too. I published the V12.2.1 video from last night's space. Cut out the empty spaces, published about half hour duration, and um, there's an insatiable amount of demand for V12 content. You know, it's like thousands of people are
Yeah,
constantly watching V12 content. Does that say anything to you about how popular the software is going to be once it rolls out wide release?
no, it just kind of goes to show how much the Tesla fan community loves to digest and has been waiting for any relevant information that actually would boost the share price. They've been waiting for V12 outside of Omar, who's just one person. More clips, I'm interested in it too. Um, so I think it's more in that we've seen the take rate hasn't changed fundamentally in a long time, and so it is curious to think about what actually would change the take rate. How much better would the software need to be, and in what ways do people care about most? So if you're talking about Uber drivers, and I don't know, this is all speculation, but one, they may care about like how fast it goes. Like if it's just going to move slowly, it's more slowly than they would, which I don't know. Uber drivers are pretty slow. Then they may wait for that to improve. They may wait to improve. I think everyone wants fundamentally less critical disengagements to really trust the software. Um, And I don't know. Some people do need better smoothness, which is I think what it's improved with V12 is this smoothness and more natural movements. But I haven't seen an obvious decrease in critical disengagements, like a step function change. So I don't know what people need to see. Um, and there's different types of people with different needs. But I will say the one thing that I think everyone would change their behavior and take a higher level of subscriptions would be if they cut the prices. And I'm still curious why they haven't done that.
Well, Omar has been proposing that Tesla cuts prices. I actually don't agree with you guys on that front. I think the price currently is fine. It's just the software needs to improve. And by the way, just to mention again that Tesla has all the data about the take rate when when people are offered 3 months of free FSD. If they're not using it, then there's no purpose, there's no reason to cut prices, right? If you cut prices, it's going to be much harder to raise it later on as the software improves. So I'm actually a proponent of just keeping the prices the way they are.
Why do you think it would be harder to raise prices later?
You know how people get, people get up in arms. Like if you just keep it at 199 today versus drop it to 99 and then increase it back up, people are going to be less happy with that second scenario.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. I don't know if you kind of announce you're cutting prices, but you plan on increasing them again later. Then at least set people up with that expectation. I don't know. I don't know how it compares to other subscriptions that people have, like, their online streaming services where they incrementally increase prices and people get upset. But really, has the take rate for those services gone down? Um, if you increase it 50% slowly, I don't know. I get your point. You do have a point there.
We have live chat going on at the same time, after party. What we do here is do the X spaces during the live chat. The live chat adds to watch hours. We have 1,000 hours to go. So I published today half hour of V12 content this morning with AI Driver and Omar and others discussing what changed in V12.2.1. It was a really good informative chat. I highly recommend you all watch it. And then also published last night's space, which is about 3 hours. That took a while to publish. Kind of crazy how long it took. Um, but then this space, which is episode 19, uh, what I do is after the space ends on X, I go to live chat while I record, like replay and record the space on X. And then we do, we can chat on live chat during this and kind of comment on it. And Machine said he was going to join today.
I was going to join what? I wasn't listening.
I'm just kidding.
I need to study more videos, but what I've seen, like, it looks smoother. There's more. You could argue it's better features, essentially, more feature complete than V11. But I'm not necessarily sure the core issue for something to get to robo-taxi levels is significantly reduced disengagements, critical disengagements, and that's going to take time to see if that bores out. And I just like when we still see critical disengagements from maybe lack of some missed object detection. I'm still curious how V12, even further training of it, will guarantee solving those issues. Um, I'm not sure. Like,
I haven't had one takeover yet on this build. Most of my drives are
yeah.
zero intervention.
So then I think we should hopefully see when this goes out to the further fleet. I mean, this is going to take months. Once it goes out to more people and we start getting updates, we can get some more quantitative information about how disengagement rates are. But in the meantime, we'll just have to trust these videos and study them.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to take months. For them to send it to random people, it's going out to anybody. And yeah, I've been pretty surprised by how positive the reviews are overall. Seems like it works across a pretty wide area. So I would expect the take rate is already increasing just with people trying to sign up. And frankly, I think the number of users is pretty high. If you look at the markets that have FSD beta in the US, we know they've got 400,000 to 500,000 users of FSD, and they've got about 2 million Teslas in the United States. So we're really looking at 20 to 25% of people picking an option that costs $12,000 or $2,400 a month. At that price, and with the quality of the software we have today, I consider that actually an amazing take rate. So I think with V12, we could actually get that above 50%. Now, I'm defining that as markets that have FSD beta available to them. So the US and Canada, and what percentage of those who have it available actually choose to sign up. I think we could get it into the 40 to 50% or even above 50% range within the next 12 to 18 months easily, just based off what we're seeing with V12 and the early feedback around that. I mean, a lot of people are just saying it's a big improvement. They're saying it's much more comfortable. They're blown away. Someone saw it pull into their driveway. And I think a lot of people are going to want to try it. I think if you send a free trial out, a lot of people, I think, would have a hard time giving it up.
Interesting. That's a big call, Omar, that about the take rate that you think is going to go to about 50% in the next 12 to 18 months. So I created a poll on live chat, the link to which is at the top of your screens, FSD take rate by end of 2024. And I put 4 options in there. Go ahead and vote. And while at it, please hit the like button. Machine, what do you think?
Well, when people say take rate, they're usually talking about like how many people put orders in and pick FSD. So that's kind of what take rate used to mean. But I think probably most people are going to subscribe.
Yeah, subscriptions and purchase together. Subscriptions and purchase. I agree. Most people will subscribe to FSD if the prices stay the way they are, $200 a month versus $12,000. Most people will subscribe. If the purchase price drops to, let's say, $6,000, $7,000, I think you can see that shift again. But um, FST take rate by end of 2024. Oh wow, Omar, live chat disagrees with you, man.
Yeah, probably because of the way you phrased it with the take rate. But I mean, it's not really that crazy if you think about it. From 20 to 25% to 40 to 50%, why can't that happen with a software that doesn't suck ass? Like, I think people are really underestimating the insane amount of demand for this because they listen to like Troy or Gary and they say, "Oh, okay, well, we did a survey and only 7% of 7% of people globally looked at it or bought it." And that's kind of a misleading way to look at it. 20 to 25% of people who can run FSD beta actually signing up for this, it's really expensive, right? So you really have to value this quite a bit. And I consider that to be pretty high for a state of the software where it was just pretty terrible, actually. Robotic, uncomfortable, and people still wanted it, right? So you imagine with this software, which can actually drive smoothly like a human, which can consistently do zero takeover point to point drives. Absolutely. What percentage of iPhones have a data plan, right? And it seemed like a huge expense at the time. What? I got to add on another $20 a month to get edge data? Well, everyone ended up doing it because a phone without a data plan is not as good as a phone with a data plan. It's much more useful. And the same exact analogy applies to autonomy in this case, I think.
I think I don't think people, 50% of Tesla owners or buyers are gonna pay $200 a month for an L2 software that they can't actually not if they could not pay attention and do something else. That's a whole other conversation. Then people are willing to pay that amount. It's too much where you still have to pay attention.
Omar made a really good argument why the take rate of FSD will increase, but the live chat folks disagree. If you want to show your support for Omar, please go to live chat through the link at the top of your screens and hit one of the higher take rate options. If you want to show your support to me, please go to the live chat. You can pick any option you want. If you want to show your support for Machine, just don't. Don't do that. Meta, welcome. How are you?
I'm one coffee richer.
What's coffee richer?
I'm one coffee
Oh,
richer. Is it me or is Machine's eye a little different? Is it like a little watery or something?
high quality. I think he took a professional photo.
Oh, I thought there was a tear in there or something.
Are you crying because you lost the
I'm
coffee bet, man?
no, I'm a man. I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong, and this was a fair and square bet that I lost. So congratulations to Meta. I would just remind you, as you acknowledged, that when you took this bet, you thought this would be over in January, and it ended up being at least close. So that made it interesting.
Didn't I take the bet in January?
Yes, and you still thought it would be done by the end of January.
I don't think that's the case, but okay. I definitely I'm not going to say it wasn't close. Now the question is the L4 curb to curb. How close will that bet be? Because you're making this whole argument that nobody's going to pay for L2, which I agree with. But if the nag effectively goes away, let's say you just have to stare forward and it's like GM Cruise and all that, what they claim anyway, and it gets you everywhere you want to go, and all you have to do is look forward. How long before people have taken those rides for 6 months or something, or like how much time do you think it takes before people just say, hey, how come I can't pay attention to doing something else because this thing is doing just fine?
Yeah, I mean that'll. I think that'll happen pretty quickly to the people who actually own the cars with FSD. Once they're using it, they're gonna realize that they're not getting nags, and I think it'll take a few months, maybe a month, depending how much you use it, and they'll stop paying attention. And then the question is, how quickly does that propagate to other people to realize, hey, if you get FSD, it's going to drive you around, and you don't have to pay attention, and that will open up a much higher percent take rate. So I would say that would take, like, I mean, 3 months. It'll start being obvious that the take rate's gone up because of that, and then maybe like fully saturate understanding in like 6 to 12 months that you now have something that's essentially L4, and people will pay for that.
How many influential congressmen have a Tesla, and how do we get them FSD?
We just need Nancy Pelosi so that her husband, when we see him buying calls, then we know Nancy Pelosi is going to push through something to promote Tesla FSD and requiring all vehicles to have this sort of software. That's when we know it's going to happen. So go to Nancy Pelosi's house. It's in San Francisco. Um, she's, I believe she's screamed at some pro-Palestinian protesters recently, saying "Go back to China," which I didn't really understand. Um, but maybe you could head over there and push this through.
So we need. Oh, Omar just left. I was gonna make a joke. I was like, we need Omar to sign up for Uber, which I think he already has. Park. Okay, he's back. Omar, we need you to sign up for Uber, park outside Nancy Pelosi's house, and wait until she requests a ride. Give her a ride and tell her that it's driving by itself.
Dude, you saw Omar coming back sooner than I did. That's so weird. These delays are crazy. Like someone said earlier that YouTube Live sound is actually earlier than the X sound, even though YouTube Live's audio in is X's audio out. How is that even possible? The delay
No.
from speaker board to the listeners must be like 30 seconds or something. That's
Yeah.
so
So
crazy.
here's what's happening. So on the speaker board, we have a WebRTC connection to each other. So we essentially all have connections to each other, and we're streaming our audio in real time. Then one of the clients to that connection is the Twitter media server, and it's sequencing that up and recording it. and then serving it as HLS. So HLS is going to be buffered maybe up to 30 seconds. So we're experiencing it live, but the recorded one, if you're a listener, comes in a little bit of a delay. But YouTube Live is also a live broadcasting protocol. So that's how that's happening.
So is that all down to save cost?
Well, it's complicated. Let's not get into it. But yeah.
There's
Okay.
implementation choices that were made that were different, and clearly they resulted in different experiences. And I would argue they weren't good decisions. But that was Twitter employees, not ex-employees.
Okay. All right. Meta, we have live chat poll going on right now. Omar said that before you join, Omar said that he expects FSD take rate to increase to more than 50% in the next 12 to 18 months. And Omar is defining take rate as percentage of new cars sold. Okay, so not the
No,
percentage
no,
of
no, no. That's not
oh,
how I'm defining it. We need to be careful about these definitions. So just looking at the percentage of new cars sold is a totally stupid way to look at it. It would be like saying how many people signed up for Apple Care the first day they bought their iPhone. Okay, that's an interesting metric, but what about the guy who bought it the next week? You have 90 days to buy it. You can just open the settings anytime and buy it. So does it really matter if they bought it on the first day or the third day? It doesn't really. So really what you want to look at is look at all the people who could buy FSD beta, who have FSD beta available in their country and it can run on their car. Of those people, how many people actually said yes when you presented them the offer? Do you want to buy this for this amount? And here's the thing that's also interesting is, you know, all my friends and family have started using FSD beta. Like it's crazy to see like my friends from college get a Tesla for the first time because now they're affordable enough and just start using FSD beta, not like as an early adopter, like a tech person. And a big part of that has been the referral program. So they bought with my link, they got 3 free months of FSD. They get the 3 free months. When they get to the end, it just auto charges their card if they don't cancel it. So by default, they just stay subscribed, right? And some people might say, okay, it's not worth it. I want to cancel. But probably a lot of people just let it keep going. Then the other thing is, as long as you keep getting referrals, you can just keep using FSD for free forever. As long as you just refer one person every quarter. So I've been sharing their referral links to try and get them free FSD. My one friend, I got her like more than 2 years of free FSD because that's just like, 8 referrals. So we got like 12 referrals and, redeemed a couple other things, but she has like 2.5 years of free FSD, multiple years of free premium connectivity. And then my other roommate, he's got like FSD for free too, right? So machines like, no one's going to pay for it, whatever. But a lot of users are getting added who actually aren't paying for it. Maybe for 3 months if they just use the referral code, but potentially even for years if they didn't. So I'm not sure if you would call them subscriptions. They are technically subscribed, they're getting a little bit of a discount, but unless they take that cancel action, which they might once they have to pay for it, it's just going to keep charging their card. And just talking to them, they're like, oh, I love using this. They wouldn't be able to give it up even if they had to pay. So I think that's also something that I'm looking at when I say that I think they could get the take rate over 50%. Like, I think, if they wanted the take rate to be 100%, they could make it 100% and just push it to everyone's car. Right. But yeah, I think it could easily double just based on what I'm seeing, like actual people I know in the real world, not hardcore, you know, early adopters or anything like that, just normal people who have a Tesla and they try it and they go, "Oh my god, this makes traveling on the highway long distance and so easy and then it can go into the city and it can take me all the way to the destination, handle traffic lights, stop signs, whatever." This was incredible. And like my roommate, he said, I actually liked some of the other EVs. Like I like the way the Mustang Mach-E looks. But now that I've tried this, I couldn't go back to buying any car that doesn't have it. So it's really a key differentiator for Tesla.
You know, I think Omar lives in a little bubble. His little 20-year-old tech bros, I truly do believe, are impressed by the software. But, people live outside of Silicon Valley and LA. And those people,
25% of people. 25%. That's crazy. For 2,400 a year. That's huge adoption. I don't think people are
it's not going
understanding this.
50%.
Does anybody
50%.
else have 400,000 self-driving users? Waymo has 1,000 cars.
Yeah, I
So
think
we're talking about 400 times the users for FSD.
machine, if you look at the way Omar's defining it, which I think is very fair, of the people that are in the pool that could be candidates, that would have to be only vehicles in North America and probably only US because subscriptions aren't even an option in Canada yet. You're looking at what, 2 million cars max? So you're already at 25% take rate.
Exactly. That's what I've been trying to say. It's a
And if you
huge
look at
take rate.
if you look at the normal curve of crossing the chasm, if that's correct, then it'd be somewhere around 32%. You face the most resistance. And once you get past that, you kind of tip and everybody just falls in line. So it's kind of been steady at the place it's been for a long time. You could argue this is the chasm. And the thing to get past the chasm is you needed to make it smooth in terms of speed, dealing with potholes. I mean, if Machine had been driving an FSD 11, he would know what the experience is like, and then he could feel the difference when he tried 12. But he's not going to have a baseline, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's ridiculous, honestly, that he doesn't upgrade his car. But I mean, you know, the take rate was 20% to 25% when the software sucked. Okay. It sucks ass. Okay. Hey, it'll drive you, but sometimes it'll try and crash into a wall or, do something really stupid. That's yet people are still using it, right?
And many of those people subscribed in the hopes that it would get better in the future, not that they actually valued it on the current technology level. And
I
I
mean,
still
that's
believe.
that's neither here nor there. Yeah, a lot of people probably did cancel because they didn't like it,
I,
and they'll give it a shot again. And you just look at what people are saying. Okay, we've gone from this thing sucking to feeling like a robot to damn it, stop calling me. We've gone from this thing sucking to actually being able to drive curb to curb with zero interventions and being smooth and comfortable. So if people liked it that much when it sucked, imagine once they try it and it's actually good.
I don't disagree that there's going to be an increase in take rate. I just think at some point there's two things that kind of limit the take rate. One is price, and two is how many people actually want to have a car, drive them. There's a lot of people who are fine driving their own car or don't simply drive that much where it's worth paying that high of a subscription level
All
monthly.
right, I'm back. The one thing you guys are missing is, yes, 500,000 people plus paid for FSD so far, but many of them paid only $3,000, $5,000. How many people really paid more than $10,000 or $200 for 12 months?
I mean, people are already their margins have already compressed on presumably on people's excess income being compressed with inflation to buy these cars to begin with, and you suddenly expect people to just splurge out like 30% increase in their monthly payments.
And
Um,
people paid those amounts like $5, $7, $8,000 when the economy was good and the stock market was high and the interest rates were low. All of that has changed now.
well, I think so. Basically, the best bet is if all the FSD users had bought or buy Nvidia calls, then they might be able to afford FSD take rate. So we'll see.
We've been talking about FSD take rate for about half hour, which is great for additional, video length. And we can maybe end it with a prediction here. Okay, um, we can do what milestone do you think will lead to the largest increase in FSD take rates? Is it going to be removal of nags? Is it going to be a price drop, or is it going to be an interest rate cut, for example?
I think the removal of nags, if it truly just became something so reliable that the person could start not paying attention, that's a bigger driver than even a price cut.
Meta?
It's the moment they let you actually make money from it with a robotaxi. I think that would be the biggest. That gets you
Yeah.
to 100. So even if you're at like 60, it gets you to 100 in one go. And
Yeah,
everything
but
else we named is incremental.
going from 20 to 60 is just as, so you don't think we can get to 60 with FSD alone, like ADAS alone?
Well, we're starting at 25. And I think with ADAS alone, yeah, I don't think we're going to get like a 40% jump. I tend to agree that there is a ceiling and different levers could get us different jumps. So like nag is removed, then price cut, then um, economy gets better, then you can send the cars on. So of those four chunks of the remaining 75, yeah, I think 25 will be money making at least.
I feel like all of the, I mean, I feel like I mean, I guess Machine disagrees with this a little bit, but all three of the milestones that you counted are probably going to happen within a couple months of each other, don't you think?
But the bet was which single driver, not which event leads to it. They don't if they unless they happen all on the same day, we can kind of tease out which led to what.
Machine, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, there's a difference between predicting when that's going to happen and what the driver is going to be. So I think the difference between not having nags and being highly usable software for L2, for assisted driving and not having to pay attention, essentially L4 is highly valuable to any individual driver. But yeah, it's not the same as opening up availability for robotaxis. And yeah, I agree. Like the ability then to use it as a robotaxi doesn't have to be that much further behind that first event. So it is a good question. Which one would generate more demand in the short term? Like I believe robotaxi would generate more demand for the software over the long term. I don't think it's going to be instantaneous though, because it's going to take a while for people to realize and buy vehicles for that purpose. Um, I don't think that's going to increase demand a lot right away, as
Well, I
much
mean, at the
as
same time, like, I don't really think Tesla is going to require FSD purchase or a subscription to add your vehicle to the robotaxi network. So I don't think that's even a valid milestone. Every Tesla will be able to, every Tesla owner will be able to add their Teslas to the network, whether they buy or subscribe or do neither for FSD software. So I think we should take that out as a possible milestone.
I was just gonna say that if it gets to a point where before robotaxi level, where you can actually work in the car and you don't have to pay. For example, I can work on a laptop in a car, then it adds real value. I mean, it adds before a lot of value, safety, etc. But this would be a significant dollar value for a lot of people that have busy lives, etc. And they wouldn't jump at this, I would say.
I'm skeptical. I used to think so, but I think I'm skeptical of that now. I think the main value driver of FSD is going to be robotaxiable stuff. I think ADAS, people just, they don't really care about that stuff. Like, for example, you don't see a rush of people buying solar panels, even though it saves them on electricity cost, you know,
If I
because it's
current
very minimal. The value add has to be massive for wide adoption of something like this, I think. And that's robotaxiable stuff. But, you know, um, so that's, I think, where the software value is going to come. I agree with the poll results in live chat that by the end of 2024, the take rate is going to be about the same as what it is today. That's what the poll results show. If you want to change that result, go to live chat and cast your vote. You guys want to talk some NVIDIA, or do you want to stick with FSD?
Yeah, I think we should move on to a successful company.
Okay, so we have two bulls and two bears on NVIDIA right now. Meta and I believe that NVIDIA is overvalued and that it will come down. Machine and AJ believe that it's undervalued and that it will continue up. Machine?
And can we take the stay the same or go down?
Well, they want the same thing. You know what? Just no. It's not going to stay at $1.65 trillion, okay, forever. So you take one side or the other. I'm forcing you guys to take a
I,
side.
definitely, I'm definitely taking the up, and I don't think I'm necessarily as bullish as AJ based on looking at his projections, but they just show the potential upside is extremely high with Nvidia, even over the next 1 to 2 years. That's kind of the time frame I'm talking here. Even his projection for the earnings that's coming out, in 20 minutes, is an operating income that, if annualized, is like $55 billion, which would the current market cap would be fully reasonably valued just on that, with a PE ratio of 30. This is not some like astronomical number. The fact is that Nvidia is having kind of like their own Tesla moment, Tesla in 2020, where people had to rapidly revalue the company, and you had people become bearish just because, well, the stock price went up so quickly. That's not a reasonable enough reason. That's not enough to be bearish on a company.
That's not why we're bearish on Nvidia. Not because it
And
ran up so quickly. We never you're back to your old methods of arguing a straw man.
that was a straw man. Fine, I
Yeah.
acknowledge it. But
Here's my argument. I haven't seen a good argument on the bull side. Okay. And annualizing a recent quarter where clearly the demand and supply are not in any sort of long-term balance is a fool's errand, in my opinion.
well, the main question is, of course, what is the demand going to be going forward? And I would argue that they've been saying projections are for increased demand, increased revenue, increased demand over the next outlook of the next year. That's what I think they've been saying on their earnings calls.
Well, that's
So,
fine. But again, you're arguing a straw man because both Meta and I believe NVIDIA's revenues and profits will continue to increase, not at the same growth rate.
right. So it would be hard just numerically for those things to grow, let's say 20-30%, and the share price to go down that much. It would just compress the PE ratio in a year from now to too low. And whereas AJ's projections are a bit optimistic in my estimate, they could happen, but he's projecting like gross margins to kind of stay kind of high or flattish for the next 2 years. And with increasing revenue, I'm assuming, I didn't see his revenue projections. And so he's coming up with PE ratios that were like, at current share price, like 12. And I'm assuming that the margins will come down as revenue goes up, but the overall income.
On the gross margin point, so I actually project they come down, but not immediately, because so my model is basically quarter by quarter, and what I'm saying is basically that the very high 74% gross margin can be maintained in Q4. So the one that is being reported tonight, it continues a little more in Q1, and then it starts actually declining. And by the end of next year, we are down below 70 at 68% and continues to decline. So I just see this whole thing basically just getting started in a sense. And and then when it comes in terms of operating margin, it's a similar picture. Due to the high top line growth, etc., all the overheads, etc., they get spread over a massive base. So what I see is actually project a slight increase, not massive. Q3 was 57% operating margin. I expect it to go. And by the way, these margins are not drivers; they're outputs from a more bottom-up modulation. But anyways,
Right.
so
Okay.
I expect a slight increase from 57 to 58, 59, and then they actually declined because they declined from after Q1 2024. I expect a continuous decline as competition, yada, 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 comes in.
Okay, thank you. Machine?
Yeah, so just, I think, AJ, I get where you're coming from. I just think gross margins declining from 74% to 64% over 3 years that could be what happens, but it seems not conservative. Like I would assume, because of what Meta has said or other people have said about increasing competition, would at least put increasing supply for chips in general, and then maybe there's some variability in demand over the next few years. If there's like a little squeeze right now because of people trying to get into these large models, and then maybe there's some lull, that maybe those gross margins come down a bit more than just 10%. And that's where I get into trying to be a little more conservative in my valuation. Let's say margins go down to 50%. Then what do you get? And my question for you though is what is your revenue growth assumptions here? Because I missed that part.
Okay, no, we have two other speakers. I want to give everyone a chance. Bradford and then Serhi.
Yeah, so I think this discussion is great with the assumed margin decline. What many may not know is NVIDIA is going to get their supply doubled toward the end of this year. It's called chip on wafer on substrate. Their supply is going to double, but still, I'm curious to see how the back order gets resolved. Tesla is waiting in line. They're like 5 or 6 in line. They're behind Meta, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and probably one other. Um, I I did a video where I talked about them having like up to 60 billion in earnings for this next fiscal year before tax. Um, I think they with this doubling of supply, you can't quite double it because you got to assume margins are going to come down some. But like, it's the only game in town. I'd say like the biggest risk longer term to Nvidia, and I'd say like over intermediate term actually is the cost of inference is coming down. Companies are getting much more efficient on figuring out how to do inference in a very cost competitive way where they're using smaller models and they don't need like a ton of compute for the inference. And you have this company called Grok with a Q, I think, that is bringing out inference specific machines. So I think that's where some of the more competition comes in. But on the training side, it's it's going to be hard for people to get away from just buying from Nvidia.
Okay. Thanks, Bradford. We're gonna go to Serhi in a second, but before that, I just want to let everyone know I am now typing in live chat as well at the same time. So if you don't want to listen to Machine, if you don't want to miss out on what I have to say because Machine is talking too much, you can go to the YouTube live chat via the link at the top of your screens.
Facebook has already announced that when they said they were going to spend so many billions of dollars on so much compute, they said H100 equivalent, but all their inference spending is on a custom ASIC. I think more and more companies can easily go to a custom ASIC because for training, you might need a lot of different techniques and various other things. But when it comes to inference, you can easily use transfer learning and various other techniques to say, even though we trained a model that had activation functions A, B, C, on our inference chip, we only have A and B. So let's tune the model and make it so it runs on our specific hardware. This removes most of the hardware specific advantages that NVIDIA may have, and it allows them to say, we're just going to scale up the inference side. And I think more of the spending is going to happen on the inference side than the training side, because soon, at some point, there will be a winner that shakes out on the training side. And everybody else will just fine tune on top of that or use a cloud provider. There was a time when everybody tried to build their own data centers and they just decided let's just use the data centers that are the most efficient. I think that same thing is going to happen. We'll have maybe like 2, 3 companies that are doing the R&D, but not everybody. And if you're a company doing R&D and you have that advantage, why would you continue to use NVIDIA chips instead of making your own training chips down the line too?
So I think there's this risk. So like with NVIDIA, prior to this whole moment, this chat GPT moment, they go through these chip cycles, and the low that they hit in 2022 was caused by them getting Osborne in the middle of a chip cycle, switching from the A100 to the H100, from the 3000 series to the 4000 series. The specs leaked, they got Osborne. And I think one risk to investors is that Wall Street's going to look ahead to a chip cycle and maybe not give NVIDIA full credit for just continuing on endlessly. I'd say the other risk is in sentiment, where we've seen just a lot of momentum. People come in, they don't understand the story at all. They don't know anything about chip on wafer on substrate, or this whole thing about inference, versus training, where they're just looking at the stock price. And I think we could have a big sell off after earnings, just because of they bought leading up to earnings, and they're just going to sell regardless. I think that the risk is pretty high.
Meta, I think you make good points. I'm just curious, what time frame do you think this is going to happen, where everyone moves off, into they're using their own inference chips, or NVIDIA starts losing not market share, but just absolute revenue from inference chips?
So we know Facebook announced they're going to do it this year. I think Microsoft announced that they're in the process of working on it, and Amazon has had a couple of chip designs. So I wouldn't be surprised if they announced that they've already got a big order coming in from TSMC. If we could see the queue from TSMC, that would give the best way to give the answer. We need to find somebody who's in Taiwan who can like go fly a drone out of their factory, whatever the heck they need to do. But Google's already off it. So I think of the 3 major cloud providers and one of the largest, companies using data centers, 2 to 3 of them have already announced that it's by the end of this year.
Bradford?
Yeah, machine. So like also the switch to smaller models, and then you fine tune those smaller models. So instead of using the 70 billion parameter model, you can use a 1.5 or a 5 billion parameter model. You can fine tune that. And then when you run inference on it, you're only like paying a 12th, or maybe even like a 35th of the inference cost. So like, um, I think like this is a risk, and like the smart players are gonna do that. So like the the ones who are doing a ton of inference should be doing that.
It is not that easy to compete with Nvidia. I mean, Dojo, so far we haven't seen the effects of it. The fact that Tesla keeps buying Nvidia products, I think, is fairly hard evidence that Dojo may not excessively outcompete Nvidia. And I think we have no guarantee that Meta's chip, Apple's chip, whoever of the big players' chips is going to see the light of day, is actually be able to outcompete Nvidia's product. And I'm not talking about the current product, but the next generation product. So there might be this perennial race going on, not perennial, but for the next couple of years, because Nvidia is the top dog, and the fact that everybody's buying from them, there's something about those products.
I disagree with this for a couple of reasons. One, Dojo's competing with training, not with inference. So if you're going to use the analogy, you have to say the trip compute in the vehicles, which actually did succeed. They used to have NVIDIAs in the cars. They don't anymore. So inference being replaced has actually succeeded in many places. Apple, great example, the R1 chip, already in all their devices, the M1. So inference is being replaced at a very fast clip. And like Bradford's pointing out, the smaller models, today the Gemma model came out, it's 2 to 7 billion parameters, and the 7 billion parameter model on many fronts is equivalent to ChatGPT 3.5, which runs in a data center. It's not good at deep reasoning, but for many, many applications where you're building like an assistant or you're doing some kind of fine-tuned data, those things can just run on a mobile device now. So you don't even need those big things. So it's not that people won't buy NVIDIA chips anymore. They'll still be in the phones and the devices. It's just, it seems like this big market cap that is being justified by NVIDIA is going to be the only provider of inference and training chips. And I think the thing about the training chips is only so much that you need in the hands of certain companies. And those companies who are really good at developing models are already showing how they're doing custom chip design. So eventually down the road, that might not be necessary, but even if they do use it, you know, once you've got a certain size of data center with NVIDIA chips, why do you need to replace those chips? Chips don't go bad. Hardware, disks go bad more. Chips don't usually go bad.
This basically assumes the current state of play. But for example, we have seen recently with Sona, etc., when it comes to generation of video, etc., there you need a massive amount of compute, and I don't see this moving anywhere anytime soon onto like a smaller, let's call it data centers. This I just don't see how you can bring down the compute required to generate video, etc., in high quality, 4K, 8K.
Yeah, I understand that claim based on today's state of the world, but I think that same claim could have been made about, I don't know how you're going to bring down ChatGPT's cost a year ago. And now we're looking at it, and already a year later, you can do what you could do in the cloud on your phone. So I think the pace of model compression is much higher than people are realizing. Discovery of the features and the tools is one thing, but then compressing it is a whole other academic field, and there's tons of progress being made there. So the last question you have to ask yourself is like, how many actors are there going to be that need to be able to generate large amounts of video? And what happens when the boom, I think we'd all agree there's a lot of companies running into the space, because at some point there's an AI boom happening. There's going to be some companies that start falling off, like the lower companies that are not performing, and their compute's going to come back online. And if the excess compute that was available and used for things like Ethereum and other things continues to come onto the market, you might actually have a glut of compute before the end of the year. You know, like all I'm saying is like there's fixed amounts of compute that's necessary for training. And I think it is larger than where we are today, but I don't think it's ongoing. And it seems to me like the company is being valued as if the sales today are going to continue at least for 5 years, not like just for another year or two.
All right, the market's closed. We also have Rivian earnings coming out, Lucid earnings coming out at the same time. I'm so curious what's going to come out for Nvidia today. I'm fascinated by this stock and all the psychology behind it. People are
Can I
really
give a
divided.
prediction here, Yaman?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, management's been sandbagging. They've been a bit on the conservative side. So I think the guide was for like 18 billion in revenue. Um, Likely they beat that by at least $1 billion. That's one thing I'd expect, and I also kind of expect them to raise their guidance for this year. Um, but
Well, all
again,
that is going to happen, but what do you expect the stock to do tomorrow?
well, I think it's more sell the news just because of all the momentum, like how excited everyone got. You had the whole CNBC countdown to earnings. I don't think they ever even had that for Tesla, and like how crazy Tesla got.
Yeah, for full disclosure, I did place a small bet as we were discussing this because I am
Stock is
pretty
moving up
confident.
now.
Okay, well, that'll go against me, but yeah, I placed a small bet in the other direction.
Which stock is going up? You mean the
Sorry,
coins?
Nvidia, I should have mentioned it. It jumped to not a massive move, but 680. I'm seeing now post.
It's up about 0.9%. I mean, these are normal. Did the results come out yet? Does anyone have the results?
But
Bradford,
Tesla,
where do you think the stock will be by the end of the year?
It's hard to tell. I had
Let's
no
say
idea.
end of the
No
year.
idea. I mean, they get this huge supply boost, and people will start talking about it and understanding it. I just wonder where the projections are going to go from there and where the margins are going to go. I'm curious to see how people react. And I, again, I don't think people are going to give them full credit once they get to this high number, because they have these cycles that are like 2 to 4 years long, and people are going to be worried that we're closer to the end of a cycle, and then the PE is going to be coming down, anticipating a drop in earnings that may or may not materialize.
Okay. Does anyone else have a bet on Nvidia except for Meta? Meta?
I'm very curious to see what happens, but my guess here is it will be very unlikely that it's a subtle movement, right? It's either going to go up a lot or down a lot. It'd be very strange that the market is satisfied and like, yes, everything sounds good as we predicted.
I'll tell you my bet. So we had it as a high conviction holding, and we recently cut our position in half because it's just like the run up and all the momentum, people getting in. I still think it's undervalued. I think it's worth at least $1,000 a share. And if Jensen's right about the share of accelerated compute, the data center, I think it could easily get to 1,300 a share. So like, I just think on a sentiment basis, we're near a temporary high. We'll see.
Is he a top 5 position for you?
It would be tied for like a top 4 position, and we have a bunch of companies. I would say 4 to 9 that are about the same weighting, um, and we only own 9 individual stocks. But we don't necessarily just run a focused portfolio, but as far as where we're sticking our necks out there on a name, that's how many stocks we own.
Okay. Rivian is up 3.6% after hours. Rivian is up 3.6% after hours. Thank you, Chris N on YouTube Live for letting me know. If anybody sees anything on Nvidia or Lucid, please put on YouTube Live chat because I have my eye on there. We're still waiting for Nvidia, I think. Yeah, still up only 0.6%. The stock is down about 8% in the last 3 days. You know, Tom Lee says Nvidia could run further. Tom Lee also says Nvidia could propel the stock market higher as well. So Omar also believes that Nvidia has more room to run. He doesn't recommend a buy at this time, but he also doesn't recommend a sell. He's at a hold. And so, you know, we've heard of all sorts of opinions on Nvidia in the last few days. Bradford?
Yeah, again, I think they could do $25 a share in earnings potentially this year, and that might be before tax, but that's a real big number. And then you look at that versus the current share price, and then you acknowledge that they are doubling their supply, but you can't just like double the earnings because the margins have to come down. And like, let's say their margins come down considerably and they only do like $40 in earnings the next fiscal year, versus where it is today. That's that's pretty cheap. That's under a 20 PE. Um,
All right, just
so
an update on Rivian. Update on Rivian. Apparently, Rivian missed results, and after being up 3% after hours, it's now down 7%, 9%. Yeah, so Rivian is headed into the lowest price that it's ever seen after these results.
I want to dig into the Rivian results. Can we do that live?
AJ, do you have Rivian results?
I am trying to pull them up right now.
Did you guys hear Starlink is making connections with government, some major contracts, classified contracts with the government now?
It's not surprising. I mean, this is a huge addressable market. That's just Starlink. Save for the rest of SpaceX, what it could possibly do, um, is kind of insane. So yeah, maybe Musk just needs to figure out X, so it has better sound quality, and then everything will be solved.
Rivian announced that they're going to lay off 10% of the folks, according to Omar.
I haven't seen the earnings, but I'm not surprised just simply by the fact that they seemed overly bullish on their uh, proclaimed cost reductions coming, given how bad their gross margins were, and then last quarter projecting that their delivery vans were going to be hurt the most in this last quarter, and that's the ones that had the highest relative gross margins. So it would seem like my guess is that their burn rates would not be good this quarter.
Lucid, according to live chat, is also down after announcing earnings. Lucid is currently down 5% after hours. Rivian is now down. Is Nvidia out yet? Rivian is down 13%. Goodness. After being down 3% during the trading hours. That's wild.
I'm really not good at holding my shorts, my short bets. When I bought puts on Rivian when they were $22 or $24, I closed it at like 17 or 18. I'd rather
Rivian,
take.
according to Walter, so thank you, Alphabet. Sorry if I'm going to have to be cutting people off right now. Rivian down 13% after hours, according to Walter Bloomberg. Rivian fiscal year guidance at the top of your screens. Guidance production 57,000 vehicles. Estimated was 80,000. That's a massive miss, obviously. Guidance for adjusted EBITDA loss of $2.7 billion, estimated loss of $2.59 billion. Guides capital expenditures of 1.75 billion is down from estimated 2.4 billion. So these are massive misses. Results, revenue 1.32 billion, up 98%. These are pinned at the top of your screens. Operating expenses are up 23% year over year, but below estimated. R&D expenses and SG&A both below estimated. Cash on cash equivalents 7.86 billion, a billion below estimated $8.7 billion. So lower than expected cash, and it looks like they're pulling back production, probably due to lack of demand. And yeah, looks like this is the end. AJ?
Yeah, I'm still processing the data. It looks really bad. I have to see how much it deviates from my forecast, but my forecast was already quite negative. But I have to update my model for these numbers, and then we'll see what comes out of it.
Yeah. Well, but the vehicles are good looking, good looking vehicles. But they have an event coming up, R2 event coming up in a month or so. But with $7 billion of cash, they're gonna have to raise some cash. It looks like. Bradford.
So this past year, they just did 50,000 vehicles. Their guide for this year is 57,000 vehicles. That's really, really bad. They need to grow quickly. They need to scale quickly to get out of this loss-making trap that they're in. I think they also need to focus on a smaller number of vehicles first, get those right, get those scaled. Trying to do four at the same time, I think, is insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could just, so I fully agree with that assessment. Uh, I did a lot of work on uh, on EV makers that use the model Rivian is using, which is similar to Tesla's. And from all I've seen, I think you have to get to around 300,000 vehicles to really make it work sustainably. And with that guidance, they're not anywhere near. They're basically now at a similar spot Lucid is in. Lucid is not growing. Lucid is on an even much smaller scale, but at the end of the day, they're in a similar position, and the cash burn is absurd.
Really, our only hope for new EV makers making it is VinFast.
Okay, enough with the Rivian and Lucid dumpster fires. We have NVIDIA coming up in a couple of minutes, so we're waiting for that. In the meantime, if you'd like to vote on the FSD take rate by the end of 2024, you may go to live chat at the top of your screens. The link is at the top of your screens and vote what the FSD take rate by the end of 2024 is going to be. We currently have 143 votes. So, and the results are widely dispersed. Interesting stuff. 1 minute to go to NVIDIA earnings. Bradford has a positive position on NVIDIA, but he halved his position. I don't think AJ has a position on NVIDIA. Machine, I don't think has a position. And Meta, Machine, did you hear this before you came back? Meta said that he put on small bullish bet for the earnings. Go ahead, Machine.
I think it's bearish, right?
Oh, never mind, never mind. It's a bearish bet, bearish bet. Yeah, yeah,
He's
yeah.
talking about being a long-term investor, like many years, and meanwhile he's over here doing YOLO puts, probably
Well, he didn't
1 week
say puts.
expiration,
He didn't say puts.
whatever,
But
selling calls, buying
he
puts.
he basically said a bearish position for the earnings. Listen, man, everybody has to satisfy. I guess they have their ways of satisfying their quick plays like you do.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I do have a small Nvidia position again, um, about 5 to 7% of the portfolio right now, just based on all these discussions and seeing that. I mean, obviously, it can go down, I believe, short term, but the current market price, I believe, is fair value for what their earnings are being generated as of this upcoming quarter. And to me, that means maybe they don't grow as much as people think, but I don't see massive downside. Giving they are supported by earnings, even current earnings.
Nvidia is up 1.8% after hours. Ken says big beat. I'm looking at live chat for further detail. Looking at live YouTube live chat for further detail. Those folks seem to be on top of things. And while machine bores us to death here.
Unless my phone is failing me, it's not out yet. But maybe the press release is out.
Let's see. Nvidia Q4 revenue 22.1 billion, above estimated 20.4 billion. So it's about a 10%, 9% beat, and the EPS is 4.93 according to Walter Bloomberg. Nvidia beat, but this was expected. Nvidia apparently always beats. Revenue 22.1 billion, above estimated 20.6 billion. And then Q4 adjusted EPS of 5.16, above estimated 4.63. So that's also about 10, 11%. So about a 10% beat on revenue and EPS. Now down 4% after hours. NVIDIA is now down 4% after hours. Thank
Yeah,
you to those on live chat for letting me know. Bradford?
yeah. Guidance is going to be what's important, and they're setting the stage for my number for this coming fiscal year. $25 a share would be just a monster number to post. If you look at it versus what they did like 3 years ago at the top of their last cycle, it's just like it's crazy to think about. But like, I'm not surprised by the sell off. I'm curious to see how it evolves over the coming days.
Yeah, I'm trying to look for headlines at this time. 10% beat on revenue, slightly higher beat on EPS. But again, NVIDIA always beats. So they're clearly, guiding low each time. So it's a matter of how much they beat and also guidance. So I'm looking for guidance. NVIDIA sees Q1 revenue of 24 billion, plus or minus 2%, above estimated 21.9 billion. So that's higher, way higher, 10% higher. So 10% beat all around, but the stock is still down. Interesting, right? Funny
Can
how
I
that
read
works out.
the Can I read the CFO commentary?
Yeah, before that, Rivian down 17%. Thank you, Ranger. Go ahead, Bradford.
Yes, I'm gonna just have my mic open here. Revenue for the fourth quarter, 22 billion, up 265% from a year ago and up 22% sequentially. Fiscal year revenue was 61 billion, up 126% from a year ago. Data center for the fourth quarter was a record, up 409% from a year ago and 27% sequentially. These increases reflect higher shipments of the NVIDIA Hopper GPU computing platform used for training and inference of large language models. Fiscal year GAAP and non-GAAP gross margin increased, primarily driven by data center revenue growth and lower net inventory provisions. GAAP operating expenses for the fourth quarter were up 23% from a year ago. So, revenues were up 165%, but operating expenses were only up 23%.
Okay. NVIDIA says data center sales to China declined significantly. The stock is now up after hours, 0.6%. So it's been extremely volatile after hours so far, and slightly in the green at this time. Data center sales to China declined significantly, says NVIDIA. NVIDIA also says generative AI has hit the tipping point. Meta, what's your initial reading?
I think they're not going to come out right and say our customers are making products and not buying our products. They're going to continue to say our products are going to be better. They're going to keep buying our products. I, I'm surprised they didn't come out and say any kind of guidance around margins might compress, but I guess they could do that in the future quarters. I think they have to start preparing their investor base at some point to say, hey, to remain competitive, we're going to have to start dropping prices at some point.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, that's all about the whole thing is about when that's going to happen, obviously, right? So again, as a reminder, Meta, now you have to kind of disclose your full disclosure. Otherwise, somebody with 9 shares is going to sue you.
Fair enough. Full disclosure, I sold a call spread. Do you want me to give the exact details or how do you want to go
No,
about
you
it?
don't need to
Okay.
give it that. It's
I
just,
get
it's
a
just a
small
directional
position,
guide.
not very meaningful, but I just did it to do it. It's like a sports bet.
Cash from operations, 11.5 billion just for the last quarter. Cash flow from operating activities, it's just insane. And they spent 1.8 billion towards shareholder returns, including 2.7 billion in share repurchase. Outlook for the first quarter of fiscal 2025. Revenue is expected to be 24 billion, plus or minus 2%. That's hilarious. They say plus or minus 2% because their last guide was 18 billion and they just did 22. GAAP and non-GAAP gross margins expected to be 76.3 and 77%, plus or minus.
Okay, but we don't want like a whole reading of the press release. What
Yeah,
we
I'm
do
just
want is what is the takeaway? I want 1, 2, or 3 takeaways. That's most important, that surprised the market the most, that's most material to the future valuation. Literally 1, 2, 3. And if those on the YouTube live chat could also do the same for either NVIDIA, Rivian, or Lucid, I would appreciate that. Sawyer, what's your initial take on NVIDIA, Rivian, or Lucid?
I haven't dove into Nvidia, but Lucid to me, I'm walking away from this earnings being like, I think they're done. Like you can't look at this and be like, they have a bright future. You could maybe argue, oh, they could do this or that in previous earnings results. They're expecting 7%, vehicle delivery growth for this year. That's really bad. They're still losing $377,000 per vehicle delivered. Um, It's looking bad. I can't imagine they won't just be either delisted or just be taken private at some point this year by the Saudis, probably.
Yeah, and Rivian is also down 15%. So I think Lucid is done. Like Sawyer said, Rivian is on its last breath, it seems. Unless one of the Rivian bulls in the space want to come up and argue otherwise, we'll welcome that always. Always welcome both sides of the argument. And then Chris N in YouTube live chat says Nvidia is now up over $700 a share, so up 5% after being down. I think just as much. 5.5% at $712. It's shooting up
Nice bet,
after
Meta.
hours.
But by the way, Yama, you were wrong.
No, my bet is about my whole thing is about by year end Nvidia. I think like I said many times, Nvidia can go up higher in the short term because there's a lot of momentum, as Omar always points out. But I think by year end it's going to be lower. Bradford and I have a coffee bet with Wes now, our own Wes here, that I think Nvidia will see 1 trillion before 3 trillion market cap. Bradford?
Yeah, I think people are going to be wanting some full year guidance, and in the CFO letter and the thing they released on earnings, it's only a 1 quarter ahead guidance. So I'm curious to hear what they say on the call. They talk about increasing every quarter, and so far it's increased every quarter as far as the revenue ever since you had the massive uptick. Um, so I think that's what people are going to be focused on is the future guidance, kind of what has been driving this earning season.
Wouldn't that be pointless though to give guidance if even just a quarter ago they said 18 billion and then it ends up being, 10, 15, 20% higher the results than they even guided. So I think it'd be really hard for them to guide full year, but maybe you're right.
There was a hint in the last quarterly call as far as what they were going to do this coming year. Um, so, like, for them to reaffirm that or to give some more solid numbers, it might help. But I agree with you. It's got to be very hard for them to predict.
I think going to Rivian real quick, something a little concerning is the gross margin, was improving from March of last year to 81%. Then in June quarter, it was 37, and then it improved to 36% in the September quarter. But it's dropped back to 46% for the Q4, and they lost about $30,000 gross profit per vehicle delivered in Q3. Now that's gone from 30,000 to about 43,000, and they were on a right trend for many quarters. I don't know why the sort of fallback here. I have to dig deeper into the numbers, but that's a little concerning.
Yeah, Rivian is done. I mean, I know people want Rivian to survive because it serves a mission. And I know the products look good. I see them all the time in Austin. But it's not just that, It's not just that.
I'm not of the opinion that Rivian's done. I think Lucid's done. But I think, Rivian taking the step to cut 10% of their salaried workers today, they still do have cash on hand. They are going to unveil the R2 in about 2 weeks here. And I heard that they're going to unveil some drastic internal, in-car changes in like Q2 that should significantly improve costs for them. So maybe that's when we'll start to see some real.
Can you put numbers around significantly?
Yeah, let me go to a DM real quick.
Yeah, the thing is, I think this R2 unveil timing is coming at the same time as they're running into cash issues. So they're clearly going to use it as a cash raise, event, which is fine. Other companies do that too.
So it looks
But
like maybe upwards of $10,000 in savings per vehicle
yeah. And what's their negative gross margin right now?
for 46%, and then
Yeah.
43,000.
Yeah. So even if they achieve that full 10,000 drop in COGS per unit, they're still going to have vastly negative gross margin, let alone the operating expenses, right? So it's going to be very difficult to turn around. They had to get their R1 products profitable, just like Tesla got its Model S profitable before introducing Model X, got the Model X profitable before introducing Model 3. like bottom line profitable, not just gross margin profitable. And Rivian just hasn't delivered on those. You know, they just raise cash and cash and cash and burn tens of billions of dollars.
Sorry, I don't know if you caught this yet. They guided to 57,000 vehicles this year, and they did 50 last year. So they're not growing fast enough either.
Yeah, the market was expecting 80,000. I was shocked by that $57,000 unit number. I would have expected higher than that.
Because they are on the demand. What are they gonna do? Just produce the inventory? You know, Model X price cuts are gonna eat Model S price cut. Model Y price cuts are either like, would you rather get a Model Y today or R1S? And I
Yeah.
know they're not. I know they're not the same product and everything, but there's gonna be some shift in between. Like it's not like RJ says where you know R1T and Cybertruck have mutually exclusive, demand. That's not true. That's just simply not true. So, but I wish them best. I hope they turn it around.
I mean, it really shows you seeing Lucid, Rivian, and Tesla and everyone reporting. It really shows you how difficult the environment is right now for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. These high rates are kind of wild. Just a quick stock update. Tesla was also getting affected by Nvidia's wild trading. Tesla's now, it was down about more than 1%, now up to break even after hours. Nvidia stock after hours continued to shoot up 6.2% at 716 dollars per share. Let's see, the peak was 739. So I wonder, let's see what happens after that. So Bradford, what are your top three takeaways from NVIDIA results?
Of the results that just happened, the revenue beat is much bigger than I thought. Um, Wall Street was at 20 and a half. Management initially said 18 billion plus or minus a couple percent, and they beat it by let's see, over 20%. So
So I can just interrupt you just to boast. I beat Wall Street again. I was closer yet again.
good job, AJ. Yes,
Bradford,
I
are
triggered
there any
AJ into looking harder at Nvidia, and I'm really glad he did. And um,
any statements on the release for beyond one quarter?
not that I'm seeing.
Yeah. Meta?
I was going to ask, do you think the China regulation statement uh, applies to more than NVIDIA, or is that just on NVIDIA at this time?
So last quarter, they were talking about the whole China thing, not being able to sell to China, and basically they said we're going to grow despite not being able to sell the 20% that we normally sell to China. And this was the same quarter where I think Meta or Microsoft was at 150,000 H100 H100s on order, and then they like increased that to 350,000. So I think the China issue doesn't matter for now. I'd say where it's a risk is if the U.S. gets pissed off at NVIDIA, like trying to work around those restrictions, because they already like basically took the restriction the U.S. imposed and like designed the chips to just be just beneath that that performance threshold, and then the U.S. regulators got mad and they're like, no, you can't do that, so we're going to reduce them even more. So I think that's the risk there.
Thank you. I pinned at the top of your screens the conversation that we had about NVIDIA in this space. There's a link to the YouTube video. It's about 30-40 minutes. I believe this is the best analysis, debate, discussion that NVIDIA has ever seen. I have not seen this high quality of discussion on anywhere else on NVIDIA, and I highly recommend people watch it.
There's
Meta,
nothing else
but
out. There's nothing else that's out there, and it's all like simplistic stuff. Looking at the PE, it's not looking forward like you need to as an investor. Sorry about
yeah,
that.
and the credit goes to all the speakers that participated in that discussion. and all the listeners and the commenters. We've learned so much so rapidly about NVIDIA in the last few weeks, and I hope that that continues. Meta?
You might actually have to change the name of the space to the different tickers every now and then. I know, just so that folks know the topic changes. Up to you.
No. Tesla is home. Tesla will always be
Oh no,
home.
you can
Yeah,
always be the first one on the list. But anyway,
always.
what I was going to say is I'm trying to read this, Bradford. I don't know, you're maybe a faster read than me, but like as I'm looking at the gaming and a lot of the other sections, is it correct that other than data centers, everything else was flat or down?
Yeah, and the reason we own Nvidia and we have for a couple of years has been AI. So we didn't own it because of gaming or crypto. I think the 4000 series could do a little better now that Nvidia's like offered this whole thing where you can do inference on your 4000 series like super easy inference for dummies at home, and you can run your own model on your graphics card. But it's just something I don't think about right now. It's almost like solar with Tesla.
What do you make of the fact that they call out that they worked with Google to build the Gemma model, and the Gemma announcement came out today as well? But it seems like they're bragging about the fact that they worked with Google to optimize the use of Gemma on NVIDIA, but that Gemma model is only like, that it's 1% of the other models. So isn't this kind of, is this an indication that NVIDIA has some pressure right now to find a way to be a competitive inference chip for their for their customers, or is this a indication that they're finding a way to accomplish that, and so then the inference custom inference silicon may not be as advantageous?
I think they're definitely aware of the issue and they're trying to and make it go as easy as possible for these smaller models and trying to get more efficient. I think even NVIDIA made their inference like 5 to 10 times better, but still, like you have this whole problem that we discussed. I don't know, maybe 20 minutes earlier with the small models. That is hanging over their head. So I think they're aware of it. And like you had Microsoft talk about making their own custom silicon, but um, they're also working with NVIDIA to do their own custom silicon.
One thing that I think could make NVIDIA do better, in theory, is what's preventing NVIDIA from moving from a sales model to like a leasing model, or deciding they're just going to have their own cloud?
They're already starting to do that. So if you listen to the call last quarter, Jensen was bragging about this. So it's almost like they're getting some of the production that's coming from the OEMs in Taiwan, and they're keeping it for themselves and leasing it out at like 2 times rates or something like that. So I think Nvidia is playing with that, and they might go deeper into that. So they're not like letting Microsoft and Google and Amazon make as good of the margins as they could. So I think there's they're working on that too. It's this whole, it's a very interesting situation where you have all these competitors, they're working together, they're like trying trying to get their own thing going too, and it's a lot of popcorn for sure.
All right, we have another 5-10 minutes to go in the X space. Another 5-10 minutes. The reason being, however long the space goes, it takes like 4 or 5 times for me to process everything, record, edit, upload, render. It takes like several steps of insanity. So what we're gonna do is, in about 5 minutes, we're gonna end the X space, but I'm still gonna be on YouTube Live as I re-record this space with a screen recording. Okay, while that happens, there's going to be a viewing after party. So I stick around. Sometimes we discuss what's being discussed in the space recording. Sometimes we discuss other things. That YouTube live chat, the link to it is at the top of your screens. You can go to that YouTube live chat for the after party, and that helps my watch hours. So I really appreciate that. All right. Any final words? Sawyer, let's start with you. Any news that came out today about Tesla or anything you want to talk about on NVIDIA, Rivian, or Lucid?
Not really. Last thing I'll just mention is, negative adjusted free cash flow for Rivian was 1.41 billion, whereas the street was expecting 853 million. So pretty big difference there. It looks like they have 7.86 billion in cash on hand. Street was expecting a billion higher than that. So if they could continue on this rate of, negative free cash flow, you're looking at maybe 5 quarters of runway. So they're going to have to do something here.
All right. Bradford, any final words?
Yeah, I'm actually most excited about V12.2.1. AI Driver had this great video out where he shows a nightmare scenario at the Costco parking lot. That is like the most insane stress test about ever, except for like maybe trying to drive it around the Super Bowl. Seemed very impressive, and he also showed like where it's not doing as well, but like I find V12 to be extremely impressive. It appears that they've fixed a lot of stuff. I think when us people outside of California finally get our hands on it, I think I'm optimistic that it's going to fix a lot of issues in our areas that we've been experiencing. So
All right. Yeah, last night we had Omar and AI Driver comparing notes on V12.2.1. That video is on my YouTube channel as well. It's about 30 minutes and they go back and forth with edge cases and new functionality and the smoothness and the comfort and everything. We're going to be on YouTube Live after Meta Talks for the viewing/after party. Meta,
What am I answering?
you're coming to my after party?
Oh, sure.
Okay. All
I'll
right.
come to the after party.
I'll see you guys at the after party. The link to it is at the top of your screens. Thanks, everyone. Chat in a few minutes.